is the case of Skylar Neese, I think the term's called. And let's get, there's literally a fly in here, and it's going to be the death of me. All right.
They didn't want to be friends with her anymore, which is sick. You know, if you don't want to be friends with somebody, leave them alone, but don't murder them.
What do you want to say to these two girls?
Rotten hell. How's that? Because that's exactly what I wanted them to do. I want them to go through the pain and agony my daughters went through. I want them to have no life because Skylar doesn't have one.
Hey you, and welcome back. My name is Mike, and in this video right here, we're going to look into the case of...
If you don't say hello, Mike, I will ban you. We say hello to Mike in this house. We love Mike. We say hello, Mike, here.
Of Skylar Neese. This is going to be a hard one to make my little jokes about. Skylar Neese disappeared from her home in Star City, West Virginia on July 6th, 2012. There's a lot of that social media yoke people keep telling me about in this video, and we'll also take a look at her two best friends. It's definitely one of those with friends like these kind of situations. So let's get into what happened
or not talk to
Skylar Neese.
Tamika, I love you. This case also deals with a lot of it being like social media, so that this is a heavy social media one.
Skylar Neese was born on February 10th, 1996.
Tammy's not here.
Parents Mary and Dave Neese. Often described as intelligent, compassionate, stubborn, and bubbly, Skylar was an only child. She grew up and went to elementary school in Cheat Lake, West Virginia.
Hey, nice vibe.
When Skylar was in the second grade, she met Sheila Eddy. Sheila, who was 5 months older, was also an only child. The two girls immediately became friends.
Hi, Cricket.
They began high school together in 2010. At high school, the two met...
Y'all remember... Hold on. Y'all just remember... Y'all ever remember things? Y'all remember...
Shoaf, an aspiring actress and singer.
The world around me changes.
Like Skylar and Sheila, she too was an only child. The three started hanging out together and began to get into just a little bit of trouble, like nothing major. Drinking alcohol, smoking weed, skipping school, breaking curfew, that kind of stuff. Parents and friends of both Skylar and Rachel claimed that Sheila was a bad influence on the two. Some of Skylar's friends actually avoided hanging out with her when she was with Sheila, whom they described as mean and controlling. Rachel's friends said the same thing about Sheila, whom they blamed for changes in Rachel's personality and her behavior. Regardless, Skylar had no intention of breaking up her relationship with Sheila, a friend she looked up to. Rachel's reasons, however, for staying and hanging out with Sheila were less obvious. She was from a relatively affluent family and was more popular than Sheila. She didn't really need her to be cool. This is just straight out of a high school drama. It's ridiculous. I think Rachel just liked the fact that with Sheila she was able to do things she couldn't do with the friends who shared her similar religious background. She was able to break the rules with Sheila. Anyway, despite, you know, Sheila being constantly described as the bad one, you know, she was evil, that kind of stuff, it was actually Rachel. When she entered the scene, that's when things...
Because this got a little confusing for me.
Took a turn.
Rachel's the redhead?
Everything seemed to be going fine.
Okay, so this is Rachel, this is Sheila, and this is Skylar. Skylar's the one that's dead.
Until her sophomore year. Skylar then was put in an uncomfortable position when, during a sleepover in late summer 2011, she watched Sheila and Rachel have drunken sex together. The sleepover ended with Skylar and Sheila arguing. A rift had begun to form between Skylar and Sheila. While Sheila and Rachel were becoming closer, Skylar had started to become excluded.
I can't sing when I'm high. You heard me.
Me too, girl. I can't sing when I'm high.
Oh my God! You know what? I need to tell you a secret. I just forgot. You have a secret from me? Well, I mean, I haven't told anyone.
Not even Skylar?
No.
Okay.
I didn't even tell Skylar that I get high. That's one of my secrets too. Like, I didn't tell her that. But anyways, well, I told my mom.
That what?
I rear-ended someone. I know.
Often, Sheila and Rachel would dress alike, leaving Skylar the
This
odd
makes
girl
it
out.
hard. It makes it really hard to understand.
Both Sheila and Rachel were sexually active and had boyfriends, while Sheila and Rachel viewed Skylar as kind of an immature little tag-along. But she also knew a lot of things about Sheila and Rachel that no one else knew. She knew their secrets, which will cause a problem. Skylar hinted at this several times on Twitter, at one point tweeting, "I'd tell the whole school all the shit I have on everyone, which is a lot. Hashtag if I could get away with it." As I said, Twitter will come up a lot in this story. Arguments that were often held on Twitter between Skylar and Sheila continued to worsen. A tipping point came when, in early June 2012, Skylar and Sheila spent an entire one-week trip to Myrtle Beach fighting. And when they got home, Sheila told Rachel that Skylar has to die. Now, Sheila's call for murder didn't come out of the blue. Fellow students and a teacher even had overheard the girls talking about the best ways to dispose of a body in October 2011. Now, the fact was that just a few weeks before they were overheard talking about that, a body had been discovered not far from where they lived, so it wasn't really thought of that odd at the time. But according to one girl who overheard them,
Let's stop being friends. Let's stop being friends. Let's stop being friends. Chat, let's stop being friends. So easy. So easy. Let's just stop being friends. A teacher.
they were specifically talking about Skylar. However, when this girl told Skylar, "Hey, I just overheard your two best friends talking about how to dump your body and nobody would find it," Skylar was like, "Oh, they're just playing a game. No biggie."
Caitlin, thank you so much for the
Whatever.
host.
Yeah. Even so, she confronted the girls about their conversation, but they assured her it was nothing.
Rachel.
Would you guys rather suffocate or get shot?
Get shot.
Shot. Wait, depends on where. Would you rather in the head? Shot.
There would be no suffering at all.
Eaten by ants or suffocated?
Suffocated.
Drowning or suffocating?
Suffocating. It's almost the same thing.
I know, but it's not.
Right
Because
in
if
their head.
you were on a pillow.
But that wasn't the only warning sign. In spring 2012, worried that Skylar might blackmail them,
Fact, Shashi.
Rachel allegedly told another student,
Hey guys, I'm gonna head home. I'm gonna head home. I'll see y'all later. I don't think this is the environment that I want to be in, so I'm gonna head out. But thank you so much for inviting me. This was fun. It was so much fun. Okay, cool. Bye.
"I wouldn't mind if she died." As you do. Rachel also half-jokingly blurted out, "We should kill her," during a science class, followed by Sheila nodding in agreement. Still, the group continued to hang out together, and while Skylar was aware of the state of her friendship with Sheila, still her best friend, she had no idea what was coming.
Hey, I got band practice. Who jokes like that?
This was her
Well-
last tweet.
Okay, sorry. Last tweet. You doing shit like that is why I never completely trust you. Stress will be the death of me. Sick of being at fucking home. Thanks, friends, in quotation marks. Love hanging out with you all too. Oh my god, why does this have so many likes? Oh, never mind, I know why.
On Thursday, July 5th, 2012, Skylar got home from her shift at Wendy's at about 10 10 p.m. She then went, kissed her parents goodnight, went up to her room. Around midnight, Sheila and Rachel either called or texted her.
Yeah, so this happens a lot. This happens a lot, chat, before. There's a lot of like Twitter cases, a lot of social media cases where they don't delete the Twitter account. So other people who are interested in crime and stuff, they will like the tweet to have in their files later for it to cover, or if they're just, crime heads like people are, they will try to look at the tweets and understand it more. So that has a lot of likes and it has a lot of retweets because people want to look at it. It's probably still live now.
Asking if she wanted to go for a ride with them. Sheila parked her
Hey, on the
car next
borderline.
to Denise's apartment, and Skylar, as she usually did, it had become a habit for her, she snuck out of her room, placing a small bench beneath the room's window, and she got into the car with the two other girls. Unbeknownst to Skylar, the trunk of Sheila's car contained a shovel, fresh clothes, towels, and bleach.
Hey there, subscriber.
The three girls then drove to Morse Run Road, a one-lane back road. Sheila parked the car on a spot about a mile into the road. And
Yeah,
they
Trolls
got out.
2, Tamika. Trolls 2.
They chatted for a
no
while,
problem. No,
and
no,
when
no.
Skylar started walking towards the car to pick up a lighter, the girls counted to 3.
Ooh, liking the show Love and Sorrow.
On this
That too.
prearranged signal, started stabbing Skylar with knives they had kept hidden beneath their hoodies. Skylar tried to run, but she was tackled by Rachel. Skylar managed to grab her knife and fight back, inflicting a cut above Rachel's ankle, but she was overpowered by the two girls, stabbing her repeatedly. The girls then stood over her, watching her die. In her dying moments, she could only say, "Why?" Sheila and Rachel had planned to bury Skylar, but the ground turned out to be too rocky for their shovels. Instead, they moved the body next to a big tree and covered her with rocks and branches. After washing themselves in a creek, the girls disposed of their...
Hey, let's not be friends. We obviously do not have things that we, like about each other, or we just can't compromise with each other. Let's not be friends.
bloody clothes and knives, but left Skylar's turned off cell phone next to her body. All of this took a few hours, and the girls were back home by dawn. The next day, Skylar's parents left for work early. They assumed Skylar was still asleep in bed. Her father, Dave, came home around midday so that Skylar could borrow his car for her shift at Wendy's. However, no one was home, and the door to Skylar's room was locked from the inside. Dave then noticed a small bench outside and an open window, and realized Skylar had snuck out at some point
Ellie, I've heard of that
during
too.
the previous night. He immediately called Sheila to find out if she had been in contact with Skylar. She admitted to having talked to Skylar on the phone around midnight, but she hadn't seen her. Soon after, Mary, Skylar's mother, got home, and a manager at Wendy's called asking about Skylar. With the situation becoming more worrying, the Neeses called the police. Then Sheila rang. This time she changed her story, admitting that she and Skylar had in fact gone joyriding the previous night. According to her, they had picked Skylar up around 11 p.m. and returned her home at the end of the street in less than an hour, before midnight. Skylar's mother, Mary, knew something was seriously wrong, and she took to Facebook.
Angel, she actually came home from work and snuck out of her bedroom window when I was in bed. Sound familiar? We have security cameras and they show her getting in a car with someone, but none of her closest friends seem to know anything, and no one has seen or heard from her since. She has not even shown or called work, so that's a little scary. That is all I know at this time, still trying to find out anything I can, but either no one knows or they are not talking. This is the messiest murder.
Soon after, Sheila and her mother, Tara, arrived at Skylar's home wanting to help in the search for Skylar. They began by knocking on nearby houses. Have you seen her? Is she here? Did you see anything? They got nothing. Then they asked their landlord, who had surveillance video, and they seen the surveillance footage. No one at the time realized the car Skylar was seen getting into was in fact Sheila's car. Now, no one at this point actually suspected Sheila's story, so they didn't bother to rewind even further to see if Sheila had in fact picked her up at 11 and dropped her home. They didn't bother. They just seen Skylar getting into some stranger's car. It was Sheila's car, but for some reason, nobody recognized it as Sheila's car. They even erroneously described it as an SUV when it's not an SUV. It's quite strange. And when the police officer who had arrived viewed this surveillance footage, he said, get this, she voluntarily probably just ran away with some guy, and she'd be back in a few days, don't worry about it. Probably the worst advice you could ever give someone, like ever. After Skylar went missing, Sheila definitely played the victim card. Kinda. So then the detective who was assigned to Skylar's disappearance from the local police department and was joined by an FBI agent. Because
Oliver, not the. Don't worry about it, Heart. Wait, is that someone?
Another person had gone missing in the area a couple weeks previous, and they thought it might be linked.
Don't worry about it.
They interviewed Sheila on July 9th, 3 days after the murder. Sheila merely repeated what she had told earlier about picking Skylar up at 11 p.m. and dropping her off less than an hour later. Sheila seemed more curious about the investigation than worried about her missing friend.
Everything's
and
fine.
It was the police detective who, when interviewing Sheila, noticed she had a silver car and linked that to the one in the surveillance footage. And the next day, the detective called Rachel, and Rachel pretended to know nothing about Skylar's disappearance. She had left for church camp on July 7th, but spent the morning of July 6th boating with her mother and her mother's friend. Both her mother and her mother's friend.
Oh, so you gonna murder someone, right? You're gonna murder someone and then go to church camp? You're gonna murder someone and then go to church camp. We gon' Church camp can't save you, bestie. Church camp can't save you. I'm so sorry.
And noticed the cut on Rachel's ankle. It was agreed that Rachel would show up for a face-to-face interview once she got back from the camp, which she never
Gotta
showed.
do that murder before church camp.
When the detective later got a chance to interview Rachel face-to-face, she told the exact same story as Sheila, that they had dropped Skylar off before midnight. And the detective thought that their stories that they told separately were so precise to such a degree, they seemed rehearsed. Nevertheless, there was nothing really to go on. Skylar was last seen getting voluntarily into a car, so they couldn't issue an Amber Alert. Because they can only issue that for abducted children, but Skylar did this seemingly voluntarily. Skylar's family and her friends thought this was extremely bizarre. Not only was she not the type of person to just leave and not tell anybody, she'd also left her contact lenses, her phone charger back in her room. She left her...
Could you imagine if Demi Lovato murdered someone before going to Camp Rock? Could you imagine if Demi Lovato murdered someone before going to Camp Rock? That's what Okay, that's literally...
Is it me, Jesus? Is it me, Jesus?
Okay, I literally was just thinking about that. Okay, I'm sorry, okay.
The bench outside her room window, she left the room window open as if she was coming back. You know?
Have you seen Camp Rock TikTok?
The school year then started about a month later, and they were still no closer to finding out anything about Skylar. Mary Neese, understandably, was pretty darn unhappy about this, and she contacted the state police, and they took on the case. Warrants were issued to seize the means of electronic communication from Sheila and Rachel.
Thank you so much for the follow.
The state police also reviewed the surveillance tapes several times, before finally figuring out Sheila is never seen picking Skylar up at 11 p.m.
We're going to start with
Camp Rock.
Her father, Dave Neese. Thank you, sir, for being here. Our hearts go out to you. We know these past 2 months must have been horrific. Tell us about what your daughter did right before she disappeared. How did she get out of your home, and what did she do, according to you, with her friends?
Well, she came home from work, like you said, that evening, and she got home and
So true, Apple.
walked in the door. She went over to her mother, hugged and kissed her mother. She came over to me, kissed me, and, went to her bedroom. And that's the last
You
we
can
seen
hear
her.
the pain.
Now, Sheila had tried to insert herself into the investigation from the get-go. She kept on trying to get onto the Neese's good side. She would cry and appear upset and completely distraught over Skylar and wherever she was. She would distribute missing posters and everything, you know, appearing to be the biggest victim of all. She began to ask the Neeses about the investigation. And when the police told the Neeses, don't tell Sheila about where we are in this investigation, we think, you know, she might know more than she's telling us. We have reason to be suspicious. She then...
Can someone explain the reasoning for this? If you were involved in a case, well, I guess because you were best friends with this person. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Because part of me is like, why are you helping the investigation? Like, do you think they're going to find something, or you're going to find something and just throw it away real quick? Because it doesn't make sense to me. But I don't know. It makes sense because I guess you're best friends, and it would come off kind of weird if you didn't help search. But she wants the attention. Have you seen that TikTok trend that's like, my sister just got married, but how can I make this situation about me? Or like, my brother had to get helicopter off because he broke his leg, but how can I make this situation about me? That's how I feel about this.
Sheila then started getting other people to ask about the investigation. She wanted to like remain one step ahead at all times. And back at school, rumors about Sheila and Rachel just swirled and swirled. Rumors like maybe
I spilled water on my
Skylar had
pants.
overdosed and Sheila and Rachel had left her to die. Now, and at this time, like, Sheila was referring to the FBI and the state police as her best buds, and they were all hunky-dory trying to find Skylar together. Rachel, on the other hand, was starting to crack like an egg. Rachel was just trying to get away from it, wasn't having any of it, didn't even want to know anything, didn't even visit Skylar's parents. She just wanted to shut down almost and not hear anything, close her ears, bury her head. And Rachel really started to fall apart. And the authorities noticed. They helped push Rachel into changing her story after they pointed out the surveillance footage does not match up, and that they had their cell phone records, so they were able to track where they were to a limited degree. So Rachel changed her story. She said that the three of them went out for a ride, and that Skylar just ran off into the woods, and that Sheila and Rachel, they weren't able to find her. And that was her story then. And Sheila then changed her story to match Rachel's story, but only after she heard Rachel had changed her story. On December 16th,
oh yeah, don't
still
forget,
no idea of what happened to Skylar,
don't use that S word,
Mary
please.
posted a long message to her Facebook account. The post detailed the various steps that had been taken so far by the law enforcement and the community in order to find Skylar. Mary also implicitly called Sheila and Rachel out for lying.
Tamika, once it comes to light, I will tell you why.
Skylar might have been murdered.
It's nothing
And
bad.
here are some of the many, many tweets that Rachel and Skylar got. The entire community suspected them. Rachel later got in a fight with her parents. She locked herself in a room. She threatened to kill herself, and she had to be hospitalized in a psychiatric unit. On January 3rd, police interviewed Rachel again. And after only a few short questions, Rachel said, "We stabbed her." Rachel told them what had happened, that they had picked Skylar up after midnight, driven her to a remote back road, stabbed her to death, and buried her body. When the police asked why she and Sheila had done it, she could only come up with, "We just didn't like her anymore." It was agreed that Rachel would take the police to the location of the body, immediately. The investigators, Rachel herself and her attorney, arrived at the
Dan,
location
thank you so
where
much for the
Rachel
host.
said they had killed Skylar. It was so snowy that Rachel couldn't pinpoint the exact spot where they had buried her. The investigators would have to wait for the snow to melt. The investigators now knew what happened to Skylar, but with her body still buried in the snow, they had no evidence beyond Rachel's words. Knowing Sheila would be anxious to meet her buddy, they put Rachel's room under electronic surveillance and had her set up a meeting with Sheila. Unfortunately, Rachel wasn't able to extract anything incriminating out of Sheila on that occasion. 2 weeks later, on January 16th, the investigators returned to the spot, this time with a canine unit. The snow had mostly melted, while the dog's handler was picking up a GPS tracker that had fallen off the dog. He noticed
Dan, what's
skeletal
up?
remains
And
under
Sugar
a
Blood's
pile of
hello.
branches.
And
6
Solstice,
months
thank you so much for the
after
follow.
Skylar had disappeared, she was finally found. During the following months, Rachel was allowed to roam free, while the investigators were gathering evidence, not only against her,
Cute
but
girl.
particularly against Sheila, who they thought would never admit to the crime. And Sheila knew they were after her. Sheila was then given a search warrant to seize every knife in her house and also her car. She also knew by this time that Skylar's body had been found. On March 13th, the body had
Damn,
been verified
Demented?
as being
Hell yeah.
Skylar
Let's
Neese's,
go.
and this information was released to the public. Skylar's post-mortem revealed she had been stabbed 50 times. Still, nothing else really about these circumstances.
I also didn't realize it was 50 times. I didn't realize it was 50 times. Holy. She really put on Twitter that she had a shit day. Girl, what?
Of her death were announced. And Sheila tweeted this
We're staying
on that
line.
day.
Fuck you. Sorry, it's getting blocked. It says, rest easy, Skylar. You'll always be my best friend. I miss you more than you could ever know. Anyways. Some Lizzie Borden stuff.
Girl.
About a month later, Sheila then tweeted this.
We really did go on 3. Because remember they said on 3
On
we'll
May 1st, Rachel
attack.
surrendered herself to the authorities and she had her first day in court where she pled guilty to the murder of Skylar Neese. She agreed to testify against Sheila in any trial. In exchange, the prosecution agreed to recommend 20 years for second-degree murder. Sheila was then arrested at Cracker Barrel while dining with her mother.
So my trauma is Cracker Barrel. If y'all don't know, I worked at Cracker Barrel for 3 years and it completely ruined my life. And every time I hear Cracker Barrel, I just literally bust out laughing. That's what was funny. You got arrested at a Cracker Barrel. I want to be arrested at a Cracker Barrel. Oh, that makes sense now. Oh my gosh. Okay.
On September 4th, Sheila pled not guilty to the charges of murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. Then, at Sheila's pre-trial hearing on January 24th, 2014, Sheila started sobbing as soon as she sat down, before the trial had even begun. Often she'd cling to her attorney for support. She then changed her plea and pled guilty to first-degree murder. In exchange for her guilty plea, the prosecution agreed to a sentence of 15 years to life, with the possibility of parole after 15 years.
Sheila Eddy, how do you plead to the offense of murder in the first degree of the felony charged in count 3 of the indictment in this case?
Guilty.
The record will reflect that the defendant has entered a plea of guilty to the offense of murder in the first degree of the felony charged
Oh no,
in
paranormal.
count 3 of the indictment in this case. You may be seated.
It's all good.
As the chair, please.
They're in high school, I'm
Eddy,
pretty
have
sure.
you heard what the prosecutor said the state's evidence would be?
Yes, sir.
Is that substantially
I
correct?
can't remember what grade.
Is that what happened?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Eddy, are you entering a plea of guilty to the offense of murder in the first degree, the felony charged in count 3 of this indictment, because you are in fact guilty of this offense?
Yes, sir.
My name is David Neese. I'm Skylar's father. I'm here today with my wife, Mary. The person sitting before you, Skylar's so-called friend, took her away from us without any remorse or feelings. You can look into the eyes of those who are responsible, but you can never hear what they heard as they were taking her life. You can see the faces of the killer, but you can't see Skylar's face. You can never understand the fear that she must have had.
Oh, wait, really?
As they took a knife and ended her life.
Ms. Eddy, would you please stand? Sheila Eddy, for your conviction of the offense of murder in the first degree, upon your plea of guilty, it is the sentence of the court that you've been imprisoned in the West Virginia State Penitentiary for the rest of your natural life.
Damn, I really fucked y'all up on the first case.
Requirements of the Constitution of the United States. That sentence is technically with mercy, which makes you eligible for parole after you have served 15 years.
Let's not be friends. Let's not be friends. This is like West Virginia, so that's why I'm kind of sitting here like, let's not be friends.
After the trial, Dave Neese, Skylar's father, swore that he'd be at every parole hearing to make sure Sheila never walks free.
SGT.
Dave, I also have a question for you. I know nothing will ever replace losing your daughter, but does this bring any sort of sense of closure, and can your family start to move on?
Like I said before, there's no closure at all, I don't think. I mean, who knows how my mind works right now, but if you can figure out, let me know. But the only way
paranormal, okay.
that
no, we're
closure,
we good. I got you. I understand.
We're in prison. I know they're both
also, thank you
right
for also pointing that out, though.
Hasn't. After the other one gets sentenced, then we can start worrying about
Tamika.
Right now, I don't think it'll ever be closed. My little girl was something you can't close.
Rachel's sentencing hearing began on February 2nd. She accepted the sentence, 30 years, for second-degree murder, with the possibility of parole after 10.
And still to this day, we do not know why they did this. And that is a question we would like an answer to. Because what in the world would be so bad that you would have to kill Skylar and to put her through what you did? You didn't think about that when you were doing it, so why would we need to think about how you feel now? You stood there for
I don't know how it's second degree, child.
Comforting, being with us, telling us you knew nothing. When the police and everybody was coming close, then you decided to confess. You need to think about everything you put us, your family, and everyone else through with not being able to have the pleasures that other kids could have. No grandchildren, no marriages, no prom, no graduation. How do you think that would make us feel?
Both are currently serving their sentences at Lacken Correctional Center. In 2014, Skylar's parents sued the girls and their mothers for damages over Skylar's death. They were arguing that the parents, by neglecting to supervise their daughters, are partially responsible for what happened to Skylar. Now that doesn't really seem right. I mean, Sheila and Rachel's parents are no more responsible for what happened to Skylar than Skylar's parents are for not watching her enough, and therefore she was able to escape out her room the night she died. Now that case never went to court, as Skylar's parents accepted an offer from their legal teams. They settled for $5 million. However, it's unlikely they will ever see that money. One of the most disturbing things about this case is how there was seemingly no motive other than they didn't like her anymore, which is just terrifying and extremely disturbing.
I don't want to be your friend.
It is an extremely sad and tragic case of what happened to Skylar Neese, a case of teenage
I don't want to be your friend.
Anger, resentment. I don't know. But it is straight out of like a high school drama. I'm pretty sure there's actually a movie or TV shows of high school things that are based on this. And that's the story of Skylar Neese. Pretty disturbing.
Okay, chat. Don't put this down to teenager things. It's not. It's not teenager things. It's really not.